black magic and betrayal forged a real-life killer clown. The flicker of a single bare bulb cuts through the darkness of a forgotten room. Paint peels from the walls like sunburnt skin. In the center of it all, a man is tied to a wooden chair, his eyes wide with a terror so deep it's stolen his voice. Before him stands a figure, a grotesque parody of childhood joy. An oversized, brightly colored suit hangs on a thin frame. A rictus grin is painted over his own mouth in a smear of garish red. The clown raises a hand, not for a trick, but to slowly wipe a single tear from his own eye, smudging the perfect white makeup. He leans in close, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that slices through the silence. "You see," the clown rasps, his painted smile never moving. "The joke was never for you to laugh at. It was for you to become." How does it get to this point? How does a boy, once known for being gentle and full of faith, become a monster in a painted mask? The story you're about to hear is a piece of modern folklore, one whispered in the shadowy corners of the internet. You won't find an official case file or verified names in a police report. This is the legend of a boy named Pippy. And while the details might be lost to storytelling, the forces that shaped him, betrayal, trauma, and belief, are terrifyingly real. To understand the monster, you have to understand the man. And to understand the man, you have to understand the curse that broke him. The pious boy and the gathering storm. On the surface, Pippy's childhood wasn't anything special. He was known as a quiet, kind-hearted kid, deeply devoted to his family and his faith. From a young age, he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his small shoulders. While other kids were out playing, Pippy was already learning the harsh realities of adult life. His family wasn't wealthy, and by the age of 10, he was already helping to support them, finding small ways to earn money, like reselling used phones. He was a child forced into the role of a provider long before his time. This is a classic breeding ground for what psychologists call the sad clown paradox. It's a pattern often seen in comedians and performers who use humor as a shield. These individuals, often shaped by difficult childhoods, learn to build a wall of laughter to hide their inner turmoil. They become masters of detachment, using a joke to distance themselves from pain. For Pippy, this didn't come out as jokes, but as a carefully built persona. To the world, he was pious and dependable, but to those closer to him, a different side would sometimes appear. He could be rude and abrasive, his words a verbal outlet for a rage he couldn't otherwise express. Some friends, and even family members, would call him psycho, unable to understand how the kind, church-going boy could also be so volatile. They didn't see it for what it was, a release valve for unbearable pressure. This kind of duality is common in people who feel powerless. A prickly defensiveness became Pippy's way to assert control in a life that felt completely out of his hands. And his family dynamics only made it worse. He was surrounded by a simmering jealousy. His piety and sense of responsibility didn't inspire admiration in all his relatives. In some, it bred a quiet, venomous resentment. They saw his devotion not as a virtue, but as a judgment on their own choices. They watched him gain respect in his local church, finding a purpose they lacked, and a dark envy began to curdle in their hearts. A storm was gathering, and Pippy, the boy trying so hard to be good, was standing directly in its path, with no idea that the people who should have been protecting him were instead plotting his downfall. The ritual and the spiral. For the relatives watching Pippy with growing jealousy, his spiritual devotion was an insult. They didn't see a young man finding comfort and community. They saw someone getting something they felt he didn't deserve. And so, they turned to a solution as ancient as envy itself: black magic. The details of the ritual are murky, shrouded in the secrecy that always surrounds such dark practices. What the legend holds is that it was an act of profound, spiritual betrayal. These were members of his own family, people who shared his blood, who gathered to perform a rite with the specific goal of destroying his life. They didn't want to kill his body. They wanted to break his spirit, to shatter the very faith they resented so much. They aimed to sever his connection to God and plunge his world into relentless chaos. Whether you believe in the literal power of curses is almost beside the point. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. For a boy as devout as Pippy, the knowledge that his own family had used dark spiritual power against him was a poison that seeped into every corner of his being. His world started to fray at the edges. His life, once defined by faith and order, spiraled into a vortex of misfortune. He was plagued by a gnawing paranoia, a constant feeling of being watched and hunted. Small accidents became frequent. Opportunities vanished right before his eyes. Relationships soured for no reason. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over him, and every step he took only led him deeper into its shadow. His once unshakable faith started to crack. He prayed, but his words felt hollow, echoing in a silent heaven. How could his God allow this? How could a benevolent power stand by while his own family worked to destroy him? The church, once his sanctuary, now felt like a hall of mirrors, reflecting his growing despair. The curse wasn't just some external force, it became an internal one. It was the belief that he was tainted, that he was abandoned by God, and that the people who were supposed to love him most had marked him for destruction. The pious boy was being systematically dismantled, leaving him vulnerable, angry, and utterly alone. Section 3. The heartbreak and the breaking point. In the middle of the chaos, Pippy found a single point of light, a girl named Thitha. For the first time since his world had started to crumble, he felt a flicker of hope. This relationship became his anchor, the one good thing in a life that was rapidly turning into a nightmare. He poured everything he had left into it, his affection, his trust, his desperate need for something to believe in. This love wasn't just a romance, it was his last-ditch effort to prove he could still find happiness. And that is precisely why its destruction was so absolute. Thitha's father didn't approve of Pippy. He saw the same underlying intensity that others had called psycho and deemed him unworthy of his daughter. The conflict grew until one fateful day, it exploded into brutal violence. Pippy found himself cornered by the father and his friends. The legend says it was a merciless beating, a torrent of fists and feet against a boy who was already spiritually broken. He pleaded, his voice cracking, "Please don't beat me." But his words were lost in the fury of the assault. During the attack, one of his own friends just stood by and watched. The physical pain was immense, but it was nothing compared to the agony of this double betrayal. The woman he loved was torn away from him, and the friend he trusted abandoned him. It was the final, crushing blow. In the aftermath, something inside Pippy snapped. The faith he had clung to, the hope he had placed in love, the trust he had in friendship, it all lay shattered on the ground next to his bruised body. There was nothing left. No God, no love, no loyalty, only a vast, echoing emptiness. Driven to the absolute edge, he saw only one way out. He got on his motorcycle, a machine that once represented freedom, and aimed it at a wall. He twisted the throttle, the engine screaming as he accelerated toward his own end. This wasn't a cry for help, it was a final act of surrender. But he didn't die. He crashed. The impact was horrific, but by some cruel twist of fate, or what he would later see as a darker form of grace, he survived. He woke not with relief, but with a terrifying, cold clarity. God hadn't saved him for salvation. He had been saved for something else. The pious boy was dead, and in his place, something new, something terrible, was beginning to stir. Section 4. The historical echoes of a painted smile. To understand what Pippy became, we have to look back at the figures who have walked the line between laughter and dread for centuries. The clown is an archetype, and its history is stained with a profound and often tragic duality. The story really begins with Joseph Grimaldi. In the early 1800s, Grimaldi became the father of modern clowning, creating the iconic white-face makeup and garish costumes we still recognize. He was the most beloved entertainer of his time, a comedic genius. But behind the makeup, Grimaldi's life was a catalog of misery. He suffered from depression. His first wife died in childbirth. His son drank himself to an early grave, and the extreme physicality of his performances left him disabled and in chronic pain. He was the original sad clown, a man whose public joy was a mask for private agony. A pun on his own name became a popular, if dark, joke. He was Grimaldi. His life established the paradox that has haunted performers ever since. The idea that those who make us laugh the most are often hurting the most. For more than a century, the clown remained a tragic but mostly harmless figure. That changed forever in the 1970s because of a man named John Wayne Gacy. On the surface, Gacy was a model citizen in his Chicago suburb. He dressed up as Pogo the Clown for children's parties and charity events, a friendly, smiling face in the community. But this was a horrifying mask. Behind it, Gacy was a monstrous predator who sexually assaulted, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys, burying many of them in the crawlspace beneath his home. When his crimes were discovered, the image of the clown was fractured. Gacy had weaponized innocence. As he himself reportedly said while under surveillance, "Clowns can get away with murder." After Gacy, the clown's painted smile was forever tainted with a hint of fear. Then, in 1986, fiction delivered the final blow. Stephen King's masterpiece, It, introduced the world to Pennywise the dancing clown. Pennywise wasn't a human killer, but an ancient cosmic entity that preyed on children. It chose the form of a clown precisely because clowns are meant to be objects of joy, making its evil all the more horrific. But the story didn't end there. The recent prequel series, Welcome to Derry, added a heartbreaking new layer to the lore. In this telling, the entity didn't just invent the Pennywise form, it stole it. It took the life and identity of a real carnival performer from its universe named Robert Bob Gray, a loving father who was lured into the woods and consumed by the entity, which then wore his face to better attract its victims. Grimaldi's sadness, Gacy's malevolence, Pennywise's stolen identity. These three figures create a dark trinity in the history of the clown. They are the historical and fictional echoes of the man Pippy was about to become. He wasn't just a sad clown or a killer clown, but a man who felt his very soul had been stolen, leaving only a painted mask and a thirst for vengeance. The birth of the clown. Lying in the wreckage of his life, having survived the unsurvivable, Pippy came to a chilling realization. He had been praying for deliverance, but his prayers had been answered by the wrong God. The pious boy, the loving boyfriend, the loyal friend, they had all died in that crash. What crawled out of the rubble was something new, hollowed out and filled with a cold, burning purpose. He no longer saw the world through the lens of hope, but through a fractured prism of betrayal. His family had cursed him. The woman he loved had been taken. His friend had watched him break. Society had failed him. So he decided to reject it all. If the world was going to see him as a monster, he would not only accept the label, He would embody it. He began to craft his new identity. The process was a ritual, a baptism into a new and terrible faith. The makeup was his sacrament. He sat before a mirror, just as Grimaldi had done. But he wasn't crafting a face for comedy. The white base was his own death mask. The sharp, dark lines were the shadows that had swallowed him. And the smile. The smile was the most important part. He painted a wide, fixed, garish grin on his face. It wasn't a smile of happiness, but a mocking, permanent sneer. It was a promise of pain. He put on the costume, bright, oversized clothes that were a parody of innocence. In that moment, looking at his reflection, Pippy ceased to exist. He had become the ultimate sad clown, but he would not carry his sadness silently. He would make it the world's problem. The mask wasn't to hide his pain, it was his war paint. It was the face he would wear to deliver his judgment. The clown was born, not for a circus, but for revenge. A quest for revenge. The clown's first appearances weren't violent. They were unsettling. He would simply appear at the edges of his tormentors' lives, a silent, smiling specter. He stood across the street from the house of the friend who had watched him get beaten, the painted grin a fixed point in the twilight. He attended a church service, sitting in the back pew, his vibrant costume a slash of chaos against the solemnity, his eyes locked on the relatives who had cursed him. These were tests. He was savoring their fear, letting it grow. He was reintroducing himself not as Pippy, the boy they broke, but as the consequence of their actions. Then, the quest began in earnest. His revenge was a slow, psychological dismantling, designed to mirror how he had been broken. He started with the friends of the father who had joined in the beating. He didn't use rage, he used his new persona. He was charming, disarming, a flash of bright color in their gray lives. He'd learn their secrets, their fears, their weak spots. Then he would strike. One man, proud of his reputation, found his deepest secrets scrawled on the walls of his office in dripping paint. Another, with a gambling problem, was driven to ruin by a series of unfortunate events, each one punctuated by a single, colorful balloon tied to his doorknob. He was a smiling demon orchestrating their personal hells, making them feel the same paranoia that he had felt under the weight of the curse. Next was the friend who stood by and did nothing. For him, the punishment was more direct. The clown cornered him not with violence, but with a terrifyingly calm monologue. He recounted the beating in vivid detail, his voice never rising, the painted smile making the story all the more grotesque. He left the man not physically harmed, but mentally shattered, forever haunted by that unmoving grin. Each act of revenge was a performance. He was no longer the victim. He was the director of their terror. The world had made him a monster, and he was determined to be the most terrifying monster it had ever seen. The final act was reserved for the architect of his demise, the lead relative, the one whose jealousy started it all. This confrontation wasn't about psychological games, it was personal. He broke into the relative's home, moving with a silence that his clumsy costume shouldn't have allowed. He didn't hide. He sat in the man's favorite armchair in the living room, a single lamp casting long, distorted shadows. When the relative walked in and fumbled for the light, the clown spoke. "Here we are again," he said. The man froze. The figure in the chair was a nightmare made real. The clown slowly stood up. There was no weapon, nothing to suggest physical violence. The terror he wielded was far more powerful. "You wanted to see me broken," the clown said, taking a slow step forward. "You wanted to sever my faith, to plunge my life into chaos. Congratulations, you succeeded." He walked around the terrified man, a predator circling his prey. "But you made a mistake. You thought you were cursing me. You thought you were sending me to hell." He stopped directly in front of him, their faces inches apart. "You weren't sending me to hell. You were just sending me home." The clown reached up and placed a hand on the man's shoulder, a gesture that was almost gentle. "You performed your little ritual to create a broken toy, but the strings were attached to something much older and much darker than you could ever imagine." He leaned in, his whisper cold and final. "You didn't create a victim, you created a vessel. And now, the show is over." The legend doesn't say what happened next. It leaves the final moments in darkness, which is perhaps the most terrifying end of all. It only says that the man was never seen again, and the house lay empty, a silent monument to a revenge finally completed. The clown had confronted his creator, and in the end, unmade him. What do you think? Is a story like this just modern folklore? A cautionary tale spun from our collective fears? Or is it a warning about the darkness that can hide in plain sight, even within our own families? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find these dives into dark legends compelling, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next investigation into the shadows. The story of Pippy, the killer clown, ends there, dissolving back into the realm of legend. There is no official record, no body, no final confession. There is only the chilling narrative. While Pippy himself may be a fiction, the forces that created him are not. The sad clown paradox is a recognized psychological pattern. History is littered with figures like Joseph Grimaldi, who lived lives of quiet desperation behind a painted smile, and real-life monsters like Wayne Gacy, who wore that same smile as a predator's camouflage. And in our fiction, the story of Robert Bob Gray reminds us of the terrifying idea of an identity being stolen and twisted into something monstrous. Pippy's story is the culmination of all these fears. It's a dark reflection that asks us who the real monsters are. The ones who wear the makeup, or the ones who force them to put it on. It's a brutal reminder that when you push someone past their breaking point, when you strip them of faith, hope, and love, you can't be surprised when they craft a new identity from the pieces you left behind. And sometimes, that new identity has a wide, red, painted smile.